Hi, everyone. We have come to the final chapter of Napoleon Hill's book called Think and Grow Rich. So I've been summarizing this book in sections to make it easier for you to be able to absorb and hopefully infuse all of these concepts and philosophies into daily life. I have now read the book 3 times, mostly because I wanted to make sure that when I was conveying the information to you, I was conveying it in its true form without plagiarizing, except for when I say, verbatim. But here we go on chapter 15, which is entitled How to Outwit the 6 Ghosts of Fear. Now, I want to make sure everybody understands that when it comes to fear, most everything in all of my studies about fear is basically where if you're frustrated, it's usually out of fear for something. If you're angry about something, it's probably fear-based. If you're shameful about something, it's probably fear-based. So I absolutely loved reading this chapter and absorbing it and being able to pass it along to you, my awesome viewers. So before I forget to say this, because I'm terrible at saying it, please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell because as I upload new videos, you will be notified. So here we go. Napoleon Hill writes in his book about how ghosts are actually standing in your way before you can put his philosophies and steps into action and preparing to get those things out of the way and preparing those steps to get everything into action. He basically says, we're all wonderful at preparation. We're not so great in actually acting on it. So this is where outwitting the 6 ghosts of fear comes into play in chapter 15 of the book. So if you don't already have read the book, I really suggest you pick it up. It's super, super cheap. It's available on Amazon or the Think and Grow Rich Foundation's website. There are 3 enemies which you have to clear out in order to put all of these steps that we've learned about in this book into play. And these are indecision, doubt, and fear. So indecision, doubt, and fear. So get those out of the way. Just like we talked about it in last chapter, there's negatives that keep you back from realizing and putting your dreams into reality, right? So let's talk about the cause and the cure of these 6 basic fears in our life. So Mr. Hill discusses that before we can master the enemy, we must know its name, its habits, and where it lives, which of course is usually in our heart and our minds with these fears. As you listen and hopefully then move on to reading the book, you need to analyze yourself carefully. Don't sugarcoat it. And you need to figure out what, if all or any of these 6 fears are actually within you. So there's 6 basic fears: poverty, criticism, the fear of ill health or being sick, or worry, that's kind of in the same category, the loss of love or someone, or of someone, I should say, the fear of growing old, and lastly, the fear of death. And yes, I know what you're thinking. There are more than 6 fears because I'm scared of tarantulas. But these are the basic 6. Everything else is of minor importance and can be grouped underneath those 6. Okay, so they run in cycles too. So think about it from this perspective. In the Great Depression, we had the fear of poverty. During World War I and World War II, we had the fear of death. And following the war, we had cycles of fear of ill health due to epidemics of disease. Fear is just a state of mind, and you have control and direction of it. So again, I say, and I remind you that thoughts become things. This is actually something I've said in many of my videos, and you've probably seen it everywhere, all over the internet, on Instagram posts. It's just everywhere. Thoughts become things. A person's thought impulses begin to immediately translate themselves into their physical equivalent, whether your thoughts are voluntary or not. If you plan it or not, it's going to happen. Those thought impulses that you pick up, whether by chance or not, may determine your financial business, your professional, or your social life, just as surely as the other thoughts that you created by design. So when thinking about the fear of poverty, for example, think about what happened during the Great Depression. And Napoleon Hill points this out in his book. After after the Wall Street crash of 1929, people started to panic. People started to think about poverty, and if the market's crashing, what's going to happen to my money in the bank? And that mass thought crystallized into the physical equivalent, which was a run on banks. It was mass hysteria. I couldn't even imagine the fear that was in people's minds that they were not going to have their money anymore. And of course, that's what you saw in the Great Depression, was that intense fear of poverty, and it became reality. I know that you're thinking, well, I don't have a lot of money in the bank, and I understand that that fear of poverty is a state of mind and nothing else, but I have no money in my bank account. So it's not really a state of mind because I'm looking at my check register and it says $5. But you can be rich and wealthy in other ways. Fear paralyzes your voice of reason. It destroys your imagination. It kills off your self-reliance, and it undermines your enthusiasm. It discourages initiative. It leads to uncertainty of your purpose, and no one wants to have an uncertainty of their purpose. We all want to know what our purpose is in life, right? It encourages you to procrastinate. We actually have had a chapter on that already. And it wipes out all enthusiasm, and it makes self-control impossible. So therefore, the fear of poverty is the most distractive of the 6 basic fears. It's actually listed at the very top of Napoleon's list because, as he says, it's the most difficult to master. Nothing brings us so much suffering as the fear of poverty. But only those who experience true poverty understand the full meaning of it. So in speaking about the fear of poverty, because it is so substantial in our heads, there are 8 symptoms of this fear of poverty: indifference, indecision, doubt, worry, overcaution, procrastination, impossibility, and expecting poverty instead of demanding riches. So indifference is expressed through lack of ambition, acceptance of poverty or laziness, and lack of initiative and imagination. Of course, indecision just means that you're just staying on the fence and you're not actually making one. Doubt is excuses. You apologize for your failure ahead of time. Worry is finding fault with others. Tend to spend beyond your income limit. You neglect yourself. You possibly even turn to narcotics or alcohol. And you have a lack of self-consciousness or self-reliance. Overcaution, on the other hand, is the habit of looking for the negative in everything or everyone. Instead of thinking positively, you think failure. Thinking that all roads lead to disaster or waiting for the right time. Procrastination is just putting off until tomorrow what you should have done today. Or in Mr. Hill's book, he says last year. Impossibility is just a complete lack of self-confidence. It's a lack of definiteness of purpose. It's a lack of enthusiasm and a lack of ambition. So it's just basically saying, like, it's just impossible. It's not going to ever happen. And expecting poverty instead of demanding riches is just basically meaning that you're associating with people who accept poverty for it is what it is, instead of seeking to be around those people who demand and therefore receive riches in whatever form you want them. Remember, we've talked about that a million times. Doesn't necessarily mean money. Now, the fear of criticism, on the other hand, robs us of initiative and destroys our imagination, and it limits our individuality and takes away our self-reliance and does so much more damage than that. Parents, do not please criticize your kids. Nearest relatives are often the worst offenders when it comes to criticism. When parents criticize kids, they are building up an inferiority complex of no other in the mind of the child. Instead of criticizing, use constructive suggestion. Criticism plants fear in the human heart and mind, and it does not build love or affection. So just like there was the symptoms of the fear of poverty, there are symptoms of the fear of criticism. There are self-consciousness, lack of poise, of personality, inferiority, complexes, extravagance, lack of initiative, and lack of ambition. don't really think that we need to get into the 7-year criticisms because we all know what these 7 things mean. The fear of being ill or being sick. It is amazing what your mind can do to your body. People have cured themselves of terrible ailments just with their mind. If you want to check out a great story about that, then be sure to check out Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has written many, many books, and he's a quantum physics author. He does a lot of studying on that. He was a chiropractor, but he basically used his mind to bust through all of the odds against him ever walking again. So you definitely want to check out his story. It's all over YouTube, as well as his books on the quantum physics, because it's really fascinating stuff. So the symptoms of fear of sickness are autosuggestion, hypochondria, exercise, in other words, excessive exercise, susceptibility, self-coddling, and intemperance. In other words, like using alcohol or drugs to numb the pain. The fear of loss of love is the most painful of all of the 6 basic fears, and it wreaks a lot of havoc with the body and the mind, more than any of the other basic fears actually do. You know this if you've ever seen a woman or a man go temporarily insane after a breakup. The symptoms and the fear of the loss of love are jealousy, fault-finding, and gambling. And the symptoms of fear of old age, for example, are an inferiority complex, thinking that you're slipping because of your age. Say, for example, well, I'm older now, so I just can't remember. Saying that you're old merely because you've reached the age of 50 or 60 or 70, or whatever you think might be too old. Because remember, in here, you're still the same age. One of my favorites, too, is trying to dress like you're younger. I've seen recently at my son's school where we've seen women that are dressing as if they were in their teens when they're 40 or 50. And we know that this instills a lot of criticism by friends and strangers. But that's, an example of a fear of growing old, because we all know it's going to happen to us. The next fear that we all know is going to happen to us is the fear of death. And that is one that is because eternity is a long time. And if you believe that once you die and you go to heaven, or whatever you do believe, eternity is a very long time. And many people don't know what to expect or how it's going to feel when they die. They just are scared of it. It's important to note, however, that death will come to all of us on this physical earth. So you have to accept it and just put it out of your mind. Remember that the entire world is made up of only 2 things, and that is energy and matter. And both cannot be created or destroyed. Both can be transformed, but neither can be destroyed. So life is energy, and death is just a transition. So don't fear death. With the symptoms of fear and death, of the fear of death, which is the habit of thinking about dying instead of just making the most of your life. And the greatest of all remedies for the fear of death is just having a burning desire for achievement backed by service to others. Let's face it, if you're busy, but you don't have time to think about dying, right? Because you're busy with other things. So be busy with service to others and everything else, and spending time with family, and don't make it such a big deal. Worry is something that is a state of mind. It's based on fear. And it's slow but persistent, and it digs itself in until it can paralyze your reasoning. It destroys your self-confidence, and it is a form of sustained fear, that worry. I actually had a friend who was super, super worried about everything in her life. Relieve yourself forever of the fear of death. Reach a decision to accept it as an inescapable event that you will experience. With the fear of poverty, by reaching a decision to get along with whatever you can accumulate without worry. Do not worry about what other people think, do, or say. And then eliminate the fear of old age for reaching a decision to accept it as a great blessing, which carries with it wisdom, self-control, and understanding that younger people do not get. We just don't get it because we're younger. Eliminate the fear of ill or poor health by the decision to forget your symptoms, to do what it takes to get well, to drink more water, to walk, to exercise, to, take essential oils. I take those all the time for my health. Master the fear of loss of love by reaching a decision to get along without it if it's necessary. And kill the habit of worry by reaching a general decision that nothing which life has to offer is worth the price of worry. With all of these decisions and attitude adjustments, that you will get peace of mind and calmness of thought, which will bring happiness. Did you hear that? Decisions and attitude adjustments will get you peace of mind and happiness. Now, you may be wondering, why have we not yet talked about the negative Nellies or the negative influences in our lives? Because we all have them. Even your negative self-talk, even what's in here is sometimes negative. Recognize that you have willpower and you put in the constant use until you have built yourself a wall of immunity against those negative influences, both in your own mind and those of others. Remember that negative influences often work on you through your subconscious mind. They're actually difficult to detect, and they keep your mind closed against all people who will depress or discourage you in any way. I love the fact that Napoleon Hill tells you to clean out your medicine cabinet and throw away all the pill bottles and stop pondering the colds and aches and pains. You have to think and act for yourself. The most common weakness of all human beings, according to Mr. Hill, is the habit of leaving one's mind open to the negative influence of other people. So again, I say, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their mind open to the negative influence of other people. I'm going to give you just a minute to let that soak in. In the back of chapter 15, there are self-analysis test questions, things that really make you think and go introspective. And if you do choose to get to that section and answer those questions, and you really, really dig deep to self-analyze, what will you find? Are you fearful of finding something you didn't know was there? That will probably help you clear the blocks, right? So I think that the Think and Grow Rich philosophy in this book makes every one of his 57 alibis, that's what he calls them, 57 alibis, obsolete. I really hope that you have found the series on the Think and Grow Rich book useful. I know that it has in my life, and I can tell you that I have learned a lot. I can also tell you again that I've read this book 3 times. I think that probably this particular chapter was one of the best in my opinion, but I really hope that you've learned something from it. And I hope that if you didn't hear the entire book series review from me, that you go back and you do listen to them, take them to heart, and instill them into your life. That said, I hope you have a great one. We'll talk to you soon, because the next book study is putting the power of the subconscious mind to work at work. So it's kind of a pull from Napoleon Hill, because he talks a lot about the subconscious mind. So that being said, adios. Y'all have a great one.